In 1974, director Tobe Hooper shocked the nation with his film The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Best known for introducing legendary slasher icon Leatherface into the canon of Western horror icons, the film tells the story of a group of friends traveling to visit a family estate in the middle of nowhere, Texas, when suddenly they fall victim to a family of bloodthirsty murderers. Featuring skull bashings, couches made of bones, human leather, blood buckets, implied cannibalism, self-mutilation, and of course chainsaw massacres, this cacophony of gore was recognized by poet Sherman Alexie. The blood, the tears, the screams, only this time it wasn't in Texas and it wasn't white people dying. In his poem titled The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Alexie draws comparisons between the on-screen killers and their victims with the Native Americans and white soldiers of the real-life Sand Creek Massacre. But in order to understand his poem, we must first understand Sand Creek. On November 29th, 1864, 105 Southern Cheyenne and Arapaho women and children, including 28 men, were slaughtered after a period of increased Native American and federal tensions. Eyewitnesses reported seeing people flee in all directions, some digging holes into the banks of the dried-up creek trying desperately to hide from gunfire. Soldiers testified to seeing, quote, men, women, and children scalped, several bodies with privates cut off, privates of one of the squaws put on a stick, bodies horribly cut up, fingers cut off, and ears cut off. 2 soldiers claimed to witness a chief known as White Antelope having his ears and scalp cut off while his genitals saved to make a tobacco pouch of later. Interpreter John S. Smith's experience best encapsulates the sheer unhinged savagery of the event. All manner of depredations were inflicted on their persons. They were scalped, their brains knocked out. The men used their knives, ripped open women, clubbed little children, knocked them in the head with their guns, beat their brains out, mutilated their bodies in every sense of the word, worse mutilated than any I ever saw before. The women all cut to pieces. Children, 2 or 3 months old, all ages lying there, from sucking infants up to warriors.
And he killed a lot of old people and babies and women. And there was not that much opposition. I mean, there was, but the surprise and how well the cavalry was armed was too overwhelming for that.
When watching a film, there's always going to be some level of identification we feel with the characters. Maybe we just went camping, are afraid of the dark, or remember being home alone recently. These common human experiences are also often the setups to horror movies. For Alexie, he identifies with the images on screen and feels connected to them through their brutality. When Leatherface comes out of nowhere and smashes the, quote, white boy over the head, Alexie remembers the clubbed children. When seeing the cows, quote, with their stunned eyes and mouths waiting for the sledgehammer, Alexie remembers the hole digging by the riverbanks. It's a trope in horror movies that the killer will take souvenirs of his victims, often as some memento or for some other nefarious purpose. In real life against the natives, the dehumanizing intent behind the mutilation of the bodies makes it worse than if it was just out of some random, twisted impulse. The author and Native Americans as a whole are forced to repress their feelings of living in a country that is terrified of the idea of a couch made of human bones, while simultaneously allowing for the genital mutilation of some of its citizens' ancestors. This repression is exemplified in the lines, "There is nothing surprising about a dead body. This late in the 20th century, tears come easily and without sense. Taste and touch have been replaced by the fear of reprisal." The years of oppression have created apathy within the mind of many Americans, and there's nothing shocking about death in this country built on blood and exploitation, especially a native's death. Alexie shows the parallels between viewers being horrified at the fictional portrayal of grotesque mutilation on screen and the lack of disgust at similar bodily desecration to Native Americans. We are fascinated by watching Leatherface, but want to turn away from and forget Sand Creek. But Alexie is saying that if you want to see artifacts of mutilated, desecrated remains, you don't need to watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You just need to go to a museum.